When talking about walkable cities, public transit and bicycle infrastructure, the first question always is, but how can they afford it? How can Amsterdam afford to build a bicycle parking garage underwater? Or how did Utrecht build this mostly elevated LRT? Who pays for this stuff and how expensive is it? But after watching this video, your new question will be, how can other cities afford not to? When people talk about how expensive trains, trams or bike lanes are, they almost never talk about the alternative, the cost of doing things we already do them. Because car dependency isn't free, in fact it's certainly the most expensive choice a city can make. So let's start from something simple: space. Every car needs roads, parking lots, driveways, turning lanes and gas stations. And cars themselves are also large and space inefficient. A single Dodge Ram 1500 alone takes as much space as 9 bicycles and 24 pedestrians. Which is crazy considering that when a single person commutes to work with that beast, they take that much space. In a typical car-dependent city, up to half of all urban land is paved just to store or move vehicles. That is half of your city's most valuable real estate earning no tax revenue, producing no housing, no shops, no parks, just pure asphalt. And that asphalt doesn't maintain itself. Every extra kilometer of roadways adds permanent financial liability. It must be resurfaced, plowed, lifted, drained and repaired forever. The US Department of Transportation estimates that the annualized cost of maintaining a single lane in only 1 mile of urban roadway can easily surpass $500,000 every single year. Multiply that by tens of thousands of lanes and miles, and you start to see where this money goes. Then there is congestion. When a city grows around cars, everyone becomes trapped by the same inefficiency. Hours lost in traffic that translate into lost productivity. According to INRIX, congestion costs major metropolitan regions billions every year, simply in wasted time and fuel. Add to that the cost of collisions, emergency response, hospital care, property damage, and the picture becomes even worse. In most Western countries, the social cost of road crashes alone equals to 1 to 2% of GDP. And all of that says nothing about the environmental and health costs. The air pollution that increases respiratory illness, or the sedentary lifestyle that leads to heart disease. Cities pay for those too, just through the healthcare budget instead of the transportation one. So when somebody says, but cycling infrastructure is expensive, the right response is, compared to what? Because car dependence doesn't just cost individuals at the pump, it costs entire cities every single year in maintenance, lost productivity and wasted land. Car infrastructure looks cheap because we built it slowly over decades. So every expansion feels like a short-term win, but we never notice the long-term disaster. But whenever you suggest building other modes of transit such as subways, trains or bicycle infrastructure, the immediate answer is, we don't have the money. Some people even suggest we should tax cyclists since they don't pay for anything. Which brings me to my next point. If you ask most people who pays for the roads, they'll probably say, drivers do. Through gas taxes, registration fees, tolls, which all sounds fair. But that is actually one of the biggest myths in modern urban planning. Because while roads are not free, drivers don't come even close to covering their real costs. For example, gas tax, often mentioned as the main source of road funding, in most countries it has nearly kept up with inflation or construction costs for decades. Cars have also become more fuel efficient, which means less tax revenue per kilometer that is driven. But the same or even more damage is done to roads due to heavier vehicles. In the United States, for example, the federal tax hasn't even increased since 1993. Yet the cost of road construction has nearly doubled, and the need for more construction and maintenance too. That results in massive shortfalls that cities and states feel using general tax revenue paid by everyone, whether they drive or not. And that's before you count all the hidden subsidies. Free parking, for instance, is anything but free. Each space costs thousands of euros to build and maintain, whether it's a surface parking lot or an underground garage. In fact, a single car parking space can exceed 100,000 euros. On the other hand, this bicycle parking garage at Stationplein Utrecht costs around 3,000 euros per bicycle parking space. And it takes more than 150% less overall space. But drivers never pay that cost directly. It's baked into rent, retail prices and public budgets. And then of course the value of land itself. Cities give away prime downtown real estate for parking lots and wide roads, which is the most expensive land they own. Imagine if all that land were instead homes, shops or offices, all generating tax revenue. So no, roads are not free. They never were, and to be clear, they'll never be. And those subsidies distort everything, from how we build cities to how people choose to travel. When we underprice driving, we get more of it. When we overprice transit or cycling, we get less of it. And cities end up trapped in the feedback loop of sprawl, congestion and debt. If we ever dare to actually charge what driving costs, the only people that would drive would be millionaires or cargo companies. All the other people would immediately see that walkable streets and public transit aren't luxuries, they are bargains. But cities don't just save money from not maintaining infrastructure, they actually make more money from walkable neighborhoods. Significantly more, actually. Cities built for, well, people, not cars, are more pleasant to walk and live in. This means people are going to walk, cycle and take transit more. But they're also going to exit their house more often in the first place, because they're able to make lots of short, pleasant trips. This makes them insanely more profitable for the city itself, as those people are gonna make purchases, making the city more tax revenue. In the end of the day, cars don't buy stuff, people do. And even on existing commuting errands, when walking by a shop, it's very easy to just step in and buy something small. But when driving, even just pulling over and walking into a massive bookstore, even if you're always gonna find a parking spot, is exhausting. Also, since you're gonna be paying less in maintenance, parking and fuel, you're also gonna have more money to buy stuff. And it's not just that. Walkable streets concentrate people, businesses and activity into smaller places, creating denser economic productivity per square meter that sprawling car-oriented streets could never. Just think of a downtown block in Paris or Amsterdam, filled with shops, cafes and apartments. Or think of a shopping mall. Each business attracts foot traffic. And they also attract more foot traffic into the mall itself. This model also attracts other small businesses to be started in the first place. It is a self-reinforcing cycle of local economic activity and significantly more density. And of course in walkable neighborhoods, property values are consistently higher than in car-dependent areas. And because of more density, more people are able to co-live in the first place, though that is a topic for a future video. In the end of the day, this model even allows for decreasing tax rates. Walkability also drives tourism and hospitality revenue. Visitors are more likely to spend time and money in areas where they can stroll comfortably between attractions, cafes and shops. That's why in Europe, Berlin, Amsterdam, Paris, Rome and London thrive economically in the touristic part, and not Nicosia, Bucharest, Sofia and Warsaw. In the US, accordingly, people go to New York City, San Francisco and Washington DC, not Phoenix, Arizona, Houston or Dallas, Texas. In fact, Houston in Texas is one of the largest US cities with a lot of tech companies, and yet it has shockingly low leisure tourism. And that has less an effect on housing prices or the city when those tourists use human-scale transit modes. Now, when talking about walkability as a term, it is easy to imagine large sidewalks, maybe some safe crossings, and you don't need lots of bicycle infrastructure when there aren't many cars around. But public transit, on the other hand, is often seen as very expensive. A tram or metro line, for example, seems to eat millions from the city's budget. But of course, it isn't like that. It never is. Of course, some of public transit's first advantages is space efficiency and speed. Along with the Dodge Ram 1500 example that I gave earlier, a single lane of road can carry around 1,800 cars per hour under ideal conditions, that is. Of course, this number is reduced significantly to around 1,500 vehicles per hour because the metric from the start is stupid, since it doesn't calculate intersection capacity. But the same lane, if dedicated to buses or trams, can move tens of thousands of people. That's a multiplier effect. More people moved, more congestion avoided, and less money wasted on endless road expansion. Take the Netherlands as an example. Utrecht's new tramlijn, the Eindhovenlijn, cost hundreds of millions to build. On paper, it seems expensive, but the economic return is staggering. Each day, tens of thousands of commuters avoid using cars, saving hours of traffic delays, reducing pollution, and freeing up road space for essential uses. It also urbanizes the areas themselves, giving them the benefits that we talked about earlier. Over time, the system pays by itself, not just in ticket revenue, which is why countries like Luxembourg were able to make public transit completely free. But seriously, one single tram up the Eindhovenlijn can carry 500 people, with the rush hour frequency that carries up to 6,000 people per hour. A transit line also covers a wider area than a road. This means that where 20 roads would be built, one transit line is instead preferred. Public transit also takes less space and can blend in with environments. In Amsterdam, for example, the Leidseplein is famous for mixing trams, pedestrians and cyclists. But this also happens in other parts of the Netherlands and other parts of the world. If we got to this piece of footage that I used before from Rotterdam, you can see the exact same thing. See how the tram takes all of the space it needs to carry those people for a short amount of time and then leaves, leaving the space to pedestrians. But since cars are so much space inefficient, they have to move at a continuous flow, requiring dedication. This all contributes to making the land more valuable. In fact, in the old years, landowners in the US used to buy land in the edge of the city and then build out streetcar lines out to the suburbs to boost their property values. So you can watch my video about rail public transportation in the Netherlands to learn more about that. In the modern times, the city of Vienna has used transit investment as a tool to concentrate growth, creating vibrant economic cores and avoiding endless sprawl that drains municipal budgets. So there are actually a lot of problems with Vienna and there will soon be a dedicated video about that. So another overlooked transit factor is energy and environmental savings. Buses and trams, well particularly electric ones, consume far less energy per passenger than cars, lowering costs a lot and also reducing health impacts from air pollution. But enough for now, cause the benefits stretch so far away this could be an entire series. And of course public transportation is not for every trip. Cycling is also a really helpful mode of transit. Of course, many cities have no dedicated infrastructure at all. Cycling is pretty famous in Tokyo, for example, but that is because cyclists go through walkable areas, low-speed streets and pedestrian plazas. But nevertheless, if you want to make cycling part of the culture, you need to build some bicycle routes. Thankfully for you, cycling infrastructure is one of the most cost-effective investments a city can make, and yet it's always underestimated. In fact, it's so silly to me that urbanists have to make so many videos trying to convince the world that cycling is such a good mode of transit, just because of how cheap it is to implement. Seriously, it's such a healthy and social way to get around. And if you go to places like the Netherlands or Germany, you can see even elderly people trying to cycle. And cycle paths can also be used by emergency vehicles and disabled people. In fact, one of the reasons the Netherlands is a very accessible country is because disabled people can use cycling infrastructure to get around. Hilly cities find their way too. A lot of cycling cities are in fact hilly, such as Vrijburg in Breisgau, the city in the Black Forest. It's time to get over with this. Electric bicycles are practically cancelling the hills. Same goes for bad weather. If you go to the Netherlands, you will see so many people cycling out in the rain. And if you need to carry something through safe intersections, you can simply use an electric cargo bicycle, which will safely and calmly get you anywhere you want for short distances. Most Americans, though, can barely understand how it is to walk safely, so when they think of a protected cycle lane, they may think of something like this. This, in a sense, is protected, but in no way do you feel like you're not part of the road. In the Netherlands, on the other hand, not only are bicycle paths planted away from roads, but intersections are so distinct and clear that you feel like even a baby could understand them. Which is rather why you will see so many young people cycling in the Netherlands alone. In this kind of infrastructure, you don't feel like a vehicle, you feel comfortable carrying stuff or cycling with your children. It's a feeling you really can't understand except you experience it yourself. This is the reason so many American tourists walk on bicycle lanes when they visit Amsterdam. Because they're so safe that you never understand which one is which. And once they come back to the US, they complain that cyclists are out of control and cycling on the sidewalks. Because it feels so safe that immediately Americans think it's a walkway. Dutch people are famous for carrying literally everything on a bicycle, because the worst thing that could happen is they could fall off the bicycle. Not get run over, not closely passed by angry drivers. Not being forced to go fast because the path is narrow or you're riding with traffic. I can cycle one day to work at 30 km per hour, passing everyone safely, and cycle the exact same route the next day at 15 km per hour, carrying a couple pipes I picked up from the hardware store without annoying or being annoyed by everyone. And when you don't pay for a car all year round, you can just rent one or get a delivery one for once. And because due to traffic, driving inside cities is slow, then cycling is always gonna be faster for short distances. And as more people switch to cycling, congestion is also gonna ease. A study from the European Cycling Federation found that every €1 invested in cycling infrastructure generates €3 to €5 in economical benefits, factoring in health, congestion and environmental gains. Cycle lanes also require minimal upkeep compared to asphalt roads or highways. Even in the Netherlands, where in some streets you can see up to 50,000 people cycling in a single day, damage is minimal. And even when there is damage, it's not really dangerous, because cycling takes place in slow continuous speed. Here is me cycling from Utrecht to Houten. Yeah, it sucks a bit, but in no way you could say that this is dangerous. And in a proper cycle network, there is no need for traffic lights or signage specific to cyclists. Watch closely this intersection in Houten. Bikes merge like magic. Same with this one in Utrecht. And even if a crash happens, the worst injury would be a broken leg or hand. One single car crash, on the other hand, can easily murder tens of people. So infrastructure is the tool that determines whether wealth stays local or flows out of the economy. When Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario, wanted to remove bike lanes from Toronto a few months ago, many shop owners publicly shared that the revenue had actually been increased and new shops were built onto those streets with the bike lanes. But okay, investments are investments, and city may not even have the money to build them in the first place. Many city leaders hesitate to invest in walkable streets, bike lanes or transit because they think the upfront cost is too high. But cities already borrow money all the time for highways, bridges or stadiums. Using a low-interest municipal debt is a powerful tool. Cities can issue bonds or take advantage of pooled financing to fund infrastructure that actually generates revenue or economic value. By the time they have to pay the debt, the investment has brought significantly more money, so the upfront cost is never paid. Unlike loans for not productive projects, investment in walkable streets, bike networks and transit hubs pay for themselves very fast. In Gothenburg, Sweden, apparently it's pronounced more like Göteborg, but I'm not gonna try to pronounce like that. The city issued green municipal bonds to fund sustainable urban projects, including pedestrian and cycling improvements. Not only did those projects enhance livability, but the increase in property values and the commercial activity helped offset the initial borrowing really fast. In other words, they never really paid the upfront cost. This approach also allows for strategic phasing. Cities can prioritize projects with the highest return on investment first. And then they could use those economical gains to fund the subsequent stages. Throughout this video, we've seen a pattern. The cities that invest in walkability, public transit and cycling infrastructure aren't wasting money, they are saving it. Meanwhile, cities that double down on car dependence face the opposite. It is ironic that the cheap option, building more roads, ends up being the most expensive of all. Amsterdam can't afford bicycle infrastructure because it's rich. It became wealthier because it built bicycle infrastructure. Utrecht's tram, Copenhagen pedestrian networks and Zurich's transit hubs all show the same logic. This isn't about ideology, it's about math. Every street design, every transport policy, every land use decision has the cost curve, and the cities that ignore that curve eventually find themselves bankrupt. Not just financially, but socially and environmentally too. And as I promised, the real question is, how can other cities afford not to? Because every day that a city spends subsidizing car dependence, it's losing money. Infrastructure isn't just concrete and steel, it's a reflection of what the city values. And if you have watched till here and learned stuff from this video, subscribing guarantees you won't miss my future videos, and it also supports me continue sharing with the world urban planning knowledge. And if you'd like to support me even further, watch videos earlier than everybody else and gain access to bonus videos such as this one about the German city of Freiburg in Breisgau, the Dutch town of Houten or the Greek islands, visit patreon.com/thedailyfreedom. And until the next video, have a great day.